Hey all you lovely boys and girls, it's your host Mr. Memsiv. Ever since the Nintendo Switch launched in 2017, it's blessed us with plenty of awesome games like Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey, Metroid Dread, and Luigi's Mansion 3 to name a few. In fact, in February, we got a pretty cool Nintendo Direct. Finally, we can use our online accounts to play Game Boy games. Sure, games like Pikmin 4 and Tears of the Kingdom were promising, but Nintendo didn't announce many first-party games for the latter half of the year. Also, we already knew we were getting Pikmin and Advance Wars, so it doesn't seem as though Nintendo has that much planned for the Switch. I don't doubt for one second they'll still be making Switch games, but for most gamers, the writing's on the wall. Let's face it, despite outselling the PlayStation 4, Switch sales have been sagging in the past few months. The technology has gotten pretty stale by now, as gamers would like to play games at higher than 30 frames per second. With consoles like the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series to compete with, Nintendo's going to have to up their game. I too believe that the sun is beginning to set on the Switch, so the question is, where will Nintendo go from here? I've given that question a lot of thought, so I have a few ideas for their next move. Here are my top 11 predictions for the Switch's successor. Oh, and make sure you stay for number 1. I saved the best for last, and it's one that could change the gaming industry. No, seriously, it's the very thing that could give Nintendo an edge over Sony and Microsoft. So without further ado, let's begin. Number 11. It will be a handheld. Hey, wait a minute! Why was I doing this in Chill's voice? And why the scary music? This ain't the top 11 scariest Switch games! Anyway, seeing that the Nintendo Switch proved to be such a huge success, Nintendo would be crazy not to make it a handheld. A large part of the Switch's appeal was the fact you could play it anywhere. Whether on your big TV or outside, this was something you couldn't do with the PlayStation or Xbox consoles. It was great being able to play console games on the bus, the subway, at summer camp, wherever. This was an especially smart move, considering a lot of people take public transportation to work, especially in Japan. Since the Japanese are so busy, they can use their free time during the commute to play Switch games. The ability to use a second screen in handheld mode, only to switch it to the TV, was a concept born from the Wii U. It was an idea that was fully realized on the Switch, as Nintendo learned that playing your favorite console games on the go is a far more appealing idea. Since the Switch managed to outsell the competition, it would make sense to make the next system a handheld as well. It's not like the old days where Nintendo could devote years to creating Nintendo 64 games and months creating Game Boy games. Handheld technology has caught up in recent years, so trying to devote time and resources to both a console and a handheld would not only be costly, but overwhelming as well. There's a reason why the 3DS was slowly being phased out once the Switch came into the spotlight. With the Switch-like console, you get the best of both worlds. A lot of fans would like to see Nintendo continue on this road of making a TV portable hybrid, so it seems unlikely Nintendo is going to ditch that. Number 10. The name. When it comes to names, Nintendo can't do any worse than the Wii U. That console was a textbook example of how not to market a console. When Nintendo revealed the new console at E3, they didn't even bother showing us the console. This only adds to the confusion, and caused many to think that it was some sort of peripheral for the aging Wii console. I remember someone commenting that the U must stand for underwhelming. It's not that I hate the Wii U, I actually love it, but a lot of people missed out thanks to Nintendo's disastrous marketing. Thankfully, it seems as though Nintendo has learned from their mistakes and won't be doing that again. As for the name, I believe Nintendo will go with something classic like the Switch 2 or the Super Switch. You know, like going from Nintendo to Super Nintendo. If Nintendo plans on making another TV portable hybrid, there's no reason to come up with a drastically different name. After all, Sony just numbers their consoles, and that's been working fine for them. Nobody confuses a PlayStation 2 for a PlayStation 3, so Nintendo doesn't need a fancy name. Yet, if they want to go with nostalgic names, they could always name it the Turbo Switch. Get it? Because that was one of the big buzzwords of the 90s, along with Extreme, and Mondo. They could also call it the Switch Panther, or the Switch Amigo, or the Switch Saturn. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to lean towards Turbo Switch. Maybe Nintendo will create their own comic series where Mario beats up Sony and Microsoft goons. Number 9. The gameplay won't be too different. Don't get me wrong, I know that Nintendo is no stranger to innovation. There are times when it works wonderfully, and times when it doesn't. I mean, Nintendo has revolutionized the industry and changed the way we play games thanks to motion controls and the analog stick. Yet there are times when they also rely on gimmicky things like using the Wii U gamepad as a second screen. With the Switch, Nintendo was still able to innovate, but I noticed by this time they have become more restrained, not relying as much on motion controls or even touchscreens. Having noticed that, I don't think that Nintendo is going to come up with something radically different. People have grown tired of gimmicky stuff like stereoscopic 3D, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Unless they come up with some incredible new way to play games, I don't think the controls will be any different. With the Wii U, you could play Wii controllers on that console, so I'm thinking Nintendo will go a similar route. They could make improvements to the HD rumble and motion sensors, but again, I don't think they'll be all that different. One thing they could do is bring back speakers to the controllers, like they did for the Wii. Yet, I doubt a lot of people would want that. Whenever I used Wii controllers, I always made sure to turn them off since the audio quality was crap. Even if they improved the audio, it would be completely unnecessary, so the only thing they need to focus on is fixing the drift problem. So yeah, I don't expect too many changes to the Switch 2. But this is Nintendo we're talking about. They have surprised me plenty of times before, so if they do come up with something new, I just hope that it's something practical or mind-blowing. Number 8. Power won't be the focus. Ever since the Wii era, Nintendo has been too concerned about overall power. If anything, let Sony and Microsoft worry about power. As history has shown us, power doesn't matter as much as the games. Nintendo prioritizes fun over power, so I don't expect the Switch 2 to be any more powerful than the Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5. It will definitely have to be more powerful than the Switch, since 2017 technology is no longer in vogue. I estimate it being somewhere on the level of the Steam Deck, if not slightly above it. This will give third-party developers an easier time making games for all major consoles. Number 7. Launch games. As the Nintendo Direct has shown us, there aren't a ton of games coming out for Switch, so it makes sense for Nintendo to pour their resources into making games for the Switch too. So, what can we expect after Pikmin 4 and Tears of the Kingdom? Well, it doesn't hurt to have a Mario game at launch. It's been a long time since we had a proper sequel to Super Mario Odyssey, and no, Bowser's Fury doesn't count. It would only be fitting to have a 3D Mario game prepared for launch. I don't think they even need to reinvent the wheel. The capture mechanic was a brilliant idea, and I think they could push it even further in the sequel. I mean, look at Tears of the Kingdom. It doesn't even look that different from Breath of the Wild. There's still a lot you can do with the capture ability, so a Mario Odyssey 2 seems very likely. Or they may have some new ideas for a Mario Galaxy 3. Or if you're one of those old school fans, a Mario Sunshine 2. Okay, let's say they don't have Mario ready for launch. What then? The Switch is already getting another Zelda game, but they could always make an enhanced version of it. You know, like they did for Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild. They could do some graphical enhancements and add some additional missions, but I wouldn't expect it to be that different. Still, just thinking about it is making me wary of purchasing it for Switch, as I could be getting a better version. But let's say that Nintendo doesn't have a Mario or Zelda game ready at launch. Who else would they get? Who are you gonna call? Luigi! They launched the GameCube with a Luigi game, so why not do it again? Hey, they could do a lot worse than a Luigi's Mansion 4. Luigi is a great character, and I'd love to see where they take him next. If Luigi has to sit this out, then there's always room for a Smash Bros. Game. That series has always been a crowd pleaser, so Nintendo would have to be dense not to have one in development. Maybe in the next installment, we'll get more third-party characters like Rayman, Crash Bandicoot, and Earthworm Jim. Maybe they'll finally make Waluigi a playable character. Alright, assuming they don't have Mario, Zelda, Luigi, or Smash Bros. Available at launch, what else is there? Metroid Prime 4, of course. Imagine how cool it would be for Nintendo to launch their new system with a Metroid game. Considering how long Prime 4 has been in development, it would be the perfect game for launch. It would be for the Switch 2 what Halo was for Xbox. Samus is a strong enough character to move hardware, so why not? The folks at Retro Studios have an established track record, so I wouldn't worry about getting another Metroid Other M. Number 6. Backwards compatibility. If Nintendo plans on making a more powerful Switch, this should be a no-brainer. Nintendo has done it for their previous handhelds like the Game Boy Advance where you could play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games on it. They did it for the DS where you could play Game Boy Advance games on the system. And they did it for the 3DS where you could play DS games on it. It's a perfect strategy, as it would give the Switch 2 an already extensive library of games. Even if they only have a handful of games at launch, gamers will have plenty to play. Those who missed out on the Switch will not only get to play the latest console, but they'll also be able to play some classics from the previous generation. Nintendo should also allow you to transfer save clouds over to the Switch 2, so you don't have to whip out the aging console. It would be nice to move your digital games over to the Switch 2, like you could from the Wii to Wii U. That way you don't have to buy them all over again on eShop. Speaking of eShop, that brings up number 5, improvements to the online service. Let's face it, Nintendo never had the best track record when it comes to their online service. They would either feature very few games a month, or go several months before giving you anything to play. While they have brought out some classic games like Super Mario World and A Link to the Past, the problem is that the online service always feels lacking. I love NES and SNES games, and I'm happy they're bringing more consoles to the system like the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, but for a lot of fans, it's not enough. Fans want to see GameCube and Wii games come over, yet even those don't appear on the expansion pack. So if you want to play games like Wario World or The Thousand Year Door, then be prepared to sell your house. Have you seen GameCube prices on eBay? It would also be nice to see DS and 3DS games too. I also hope they include Sega Genesis games from the expansion pack. I'd love to see them put out other consoles like the Turbo Duo, Neo Geo, and Game Gear. Their subscription service desperately needs more third-party titles. Personally, I don't mind a subscription-based service, but Nintendo should also give gamers the option of purchasing classic games they want. You never know when something is going to be taken off a streaming service, which is why there's still people today who prefer DVDs and physical games. Lastly, Nintendo needs to reorganize the eShop, make it less cluttered. The eShop menus on the Wii U and 3DS weren't perfect, but they were still better than this. Offer more separate categories and ease-of-use submenus, and add some background music. Seriously, it's like a ghost town whenever I boot up the eShop on Switch. Number 4. DS features. If Nintendo plans on porting DS and 3DS games to the console, then they should use features from the DS. That would include touchscreen controls and a microphone. Nintendo has been using touchscreens ever since the DS, so there's no reason for them to abandon them now. If they plan on making Switch games available like 3D World and Captain Toad, then they're a must since they use those controls in handheld mode. A stylus would also be nice, since some DS games are awkward to play without it. As for the microphone, it was never one of my favorite things about the DS, but I guess they can improve it for the Switch too. Games like WarioWare Touch and Bowser's Inside Story use them, so porting those games over would be impossible unless Nintendo includes a microphone, or at the very least, allow us to use a headset for them. Number 3. 4K. Yeah, this one's a bit of a no-brainer. When rumors of the Switch Pro began circulating, People suspected it would support 4K. We didn't get that, but there's no reason why the Switch 2 couldn't support it. I know that Nintendo is sometimes slow to get with the times, like how the Wii console didn't even support HD, or the fact Nintendo was slow to embrace online gaming. 4K is becoming more commonplace now, and it'll be a matter of time when 8K and 16K will become the norm, so 1080p is not going to cut it. Number 2. A better record button. I never liked the Switch's record button because it only captures 30 seconds of footage, and the quality isn't that great to begin with. I almost never use it, preferring to use my Elgato. This is one feature Nintendo should correct. Whenever I'm playing the Switch on the go, I regret that I can't really record anything, so I have to wait until I come home to do that. I'm not going to use my phone because that's lame. But how cool would it be if I were to record footage on the go? Nintendo could make a lot of adjustments, like allowing you to record in at least 1080p with 60 frames per second. Once I'm finished recording, I could just save it into the system's memory, extract it, and then make my videos. What's more, they could also include a setting that allows you to record footage from the past 30 minutes. You know, like Elgato and GeForce. This would be incredibly handy for those who forgot to hit the record button. Besides, people love sharing their gaming videos online, whether through YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram. So Nintendo should just embrace this instead of giving us a wimpy record button. Alright, with all these features mentioned, what more could Nintendo do? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I say my biggest prediction for last. You ready? Drumroll, please. Number 1. The Switch 2 will have a foldable screen. Think about it. There are a ton of possibilities for this idea. This would be the biggest innovation for the Switch 2, as to my knowledge, no console before has ever launched with foldable screens. Normally, you can use a regular sized Switch screen on the go. Let's say you're in a crowded place, so you want to keep it as is. However, you can fold the screen to get a bigger view of your surroundings. Doing that will not only give you a better view, but you can use the top half of your screen for menus, maps, HUDs, and even a separate camera. The folding screen can use one hinge. This would give it a front screen you can use for normal gaming. Once you open it up, you get a bigger screen that's more akin to the 3DS, only better. This time, both screens will be just as big, allowing for more consistency between the visuals and gameplay. They can both function as a touchscreen, instead of having to rely on just the bottom screen. This would allow for better touchscreen games. With foldable screens, it will be easy for Nintendo to port DS and 3DS games to the system. In case that's not enough screen space for you, you can even use a slider to pull up for even more room. The multiple screens would be perfect for multitasking. Say you have one screen open for gaming, and another screen has the Switch 2 menu open. In the menu, you can make purchases while playing your game, or simply use the menu to switch to another game with one simple touch. No more pressing the home button. Also, Nintendo can have a Miiverse running while you're playing your game. At the top screen, you can focus on the action, while at the bottom, you can see your Mii focus on other tasks and receive messages. With the additional screen, you can receive alerts like when your friends are available, that the new software you purchased is ready to play, or that the controller is running low on battery. That way it doesn't interfere with the main screen. The foldable screen would be ideal for multitaskers. Say you want to play games on your Switch 2, but there's this one show that you really wanted to watch. Fear not, you can play your game at the bottom screen while listening to your show at the top. You can even adjust the volume for each screen so one doesn't drown out the other.
Hey.
Well, thanks for coming by.
It's crazy, but who's got time for both? What do you expect people to do nowadays? Go for a walk outside? But that's not all. With improved RAM, you can even have two games open at once. For instance, say you have a slow-paced game in one screen, like a pet simulator. In another, you can have an action-heavy first-person shooter. You can choose to switch between games at will. You can blow some aliens away as you're waiting for your pet chow to wake up. A flexible screen would also be great for multiplayer. When standing the Switch 2 up, just pulling up an extra screen would make it easier to see in multiplayer mode. That would be great for split screen action, and way better than sharing that one tiny screen on the Switch. In an online game, you can have one screen focus on the main action, while the other could be used to see what your opponent is up to. But why stop there? You can also change camera angles to see what multiple opponents are up to, while keeping your main screen intact. This would also be cool for co-op as you figure out where your friend is and how best to help them. Other possibilities include video conferencing with your friends. You can see your friend's face on the screen if you want. This would also be a great fit for streamers as one screen will show the action, whereas the other will show messages from your followers. I'm not saying that every game will require the use of the folding screen. After all, I still enjoy playing games on my television, but it would be a sweet perk for those who prefer handhelds. As another possibility, the Switch 2 can even have a trifold screen. That way you can use 3 screens instead of just merely 2. Bigger is better, right? I am a firm believer that foldable screens are the future of gaming, and what better company to pioneer that than Nintendo? Hey Nintendo, if you're watching this video and haven't considered the possibility yet, hire me! I got lots of ideas! If the Switch 2 does feature a folding screen, then I want royalties! I mean it! What do you think? Should Nintendo make a more powerful Switch? Or should they focus on something else entirely? Do you think that folding screens are a good idea? Let me know in the comments. And be sure to click that subscribe button. And leave a like while you're at it. Who knows what the future will hold. But till then, have a great rest of your day.